Another very, very beautiful day that God has given us. And thank you so much for the people who have been watching my videos on Two Wheels Paradise. And also for those ones who follow my postings on other social media platforms like TikTok and Facebook. My name is Meshach Samson Miner. I am a motorcycle reviewer. I am an adventure rider. I tell stories through the eyes of a motorcycle. Today, there is a discussion I want us to have in this video, something that has been requested by my viewers after people finding out that there is so much they do not understand about how motorcycles cool their engines. So follow me, follow this video to the end. Let's do this. Motorcycle engine cooling systems. How many do we have? How do you differentiate them? Which one is better? Which one to look out for? That is the discussion we are going to have in this video. Subscribe to Two Wheels Paradise. Follow me, Meshach Samson Miner, on Facebook. Two Wheels Paradise on TikTok. You will learn a lot. Let's do this. Right. Motorcycles, just like motor vehicles, have a combustion engine. An engine that runs on fuel and it produces heat when it is running. For that reason, there should be some cooling mechanism to avoid having that engine boil up or even melt or seize. That's why we have different cooling systems. We have three cooling systems. And that is what I want to explain in this video using these three motorcycles here. Can you see the three bikes? This is Taro Ranger 400. This is Zhongsheng Carrera 200. And this is Tekken 250. Those three bikes have different cooling systems. Which one are we talking about? Number one, we have something called air-cooled. Air-cooled motorcycle. You will find out what makes it air-cooled and how air cools that motorcycle. Second, we have something called oil-cooled. Oil-cooled motorcycle. How does oil cool a motorcycle? Is it cooling from outside? Is it cooling from inside? Third, we have another category called liquid-cooled. Remember, oil is liquid, but we do not count oil when we are discussing liquid cooled. I will tell you what other liquid we are talking about. So stick with me to the end of this video. Trust me, you're going to learn a lot. Even if you knew something, you will get more details about what you're supposed to know about motorcycle cooling systems. Do not get duped by motorcycle sellers. When they talk about these things, these shenanigans of air-cooled, liquid-cooled, oil-cooled, they are mixing beginners up, and that is the reason why we needed to have this video as early as now. Let us start with the most basic, air-cooled engine. How does air cool an engine, and how can you tell the difference between liquid-cooled, oil-cooled, and air-cooled? Let's start with number one. We are going to the Zhongsheng Carrera 200. Entry level into the world of adventure, traveling, off-road, whatever you call it. This is what we have here. This engine from Zhongsheng, this is an engine that is air-cooled. Purely air-cooled. Okay? I want you to look at the structure of this engine. This is the exhaust manifold. This is the base of the engine. This is the block. This is where the piston lands up and down. This is the spark plug. Can you see the spark plug? This is the cylinder head. And this is the carburetor. That is the only thing we have here. We don't have a radiator. We don't have anything. Looking at this engine, I want you to look at these cuts and see how deep they are. Okay? I want you to see how deep these cuts are. Let me try and get something that can actually demonstrate how deep these things are. Can you see how deep they are? Yes, they are so deep. These cuts. We will discuss the benefits of having these cuts. Have you noted about that one? This engine is air-cooled. Let me show you the second one. The second one, we are landing to Tekken 250. Tekken 250 has an engine that looks almost the same with the one we had on the Zhongsheng. It has cuts, but these cuts are not deep. These cuts are just very small. The other one was almost like this, but this one's very small. Actually, like a quarter of this, the cuts we have here. Apart from having those cuts, this is the normal engine, the base of the engine. As you can see, the crankcase from there. We have the block, and we have the cylinder head on top here, just like the other one. We have the cylinder head on top. We have the carburetor, the exhaust manifold. But we have something different that we did not have in the other bike, this one. Can you see this thing? We did not have this on the other bike. And I want you to confirm. Do we have it anywhere here? We don't have it anywhere here. It's supposed to be somewhere here. It is not there. Okay? We talked about these cuts are so deep. These ones are quite small. Okay? But we have an extra gadget here. This one. This is an oil cooler. This is an oil cooler. I'll explain more. Let's go now to the third one. From air-cooled to oil-cooled to liquid-cooled. Can you see this guy? This is a radiator. This is a radiator, and it has very, very special liquid in it. And you can see, we even have a place where, you see this? You see? It has this green liquid. This is called antifreeze or coolant. Okay? I'm getting very, very close to the discussion. This guy doesn't have the cuts we were talking about. Can you see how smooth this engine is? Apart from the little designs we have here, this engine doesn't have the cuts we have here. These ones. This guy doesn't have them. This guy doesn't have them. We have them here. Why don't we have them? This guy does not have this. Okay? So this one has a radiator, but it doesn't have the cuts. This one doesn't have a radiator. It has very deep cuts. This one has this guy and very small cuts. I'm very sure now you have noted the difference. This is oil cooled. Small cuts, they are called fins, small fins, but it has an oil cooler. And I want you to note that this oil cooler is a small gadget, but it doesn't have a cork somewhere you can open or close. Doesn't have a cork anywhere. This one has this. You can open and close. It has this. And because it has this, there is another gadget called the reservoir. This one. The liquid we have here has an extra liquid here. The same. You can see the pipes where if this one goes lower than the required level, the engine on its own has a mechanism of drawing more from here to fill up this one to maintain the required level. Okay? Now, let's get to the discussion. This is liquid cooled. Okay? Liquid cooled. This engine will definitely get a lot of air when you're riding because air flows. Air flows when you're riding. But the thickness of this engine, the thickness, if you open this block, the thickness of the material making this engine is so thick, so huge, that air is not enough to cool this engine. Air is not enough. You require more to cool this engine because of retaining temperature. The thickness of the material making this engine is so huge that this engine is going to generate more temperature, retain more temperature. If it doesn't have these things, it is going to boil up. It is going to heat up. Here, we have what we call the water pump. This is called the water pump. Some people use water in this radiator, but it is not recommended because water tends to generate rust, and water also boils faster than the liquid we have here, the antifreeze. Even if you keep this bike in a fridge, in a freezer, it is going to be very difficult for this liquid to freeze up and become solid. So, the countries where they usually have a lot of winter and stuff like that, this liquid is very important because it never freezes inside the radiator. If it freezes, you are done. It doesn't freeze. It's called antifreeze, anti-rust. It helps in preventing freezing when temperatures go so low in the countries that have winter. It also protects the engine from getting rust. As you know, water generates rust, definitely. So, here we have the pump. This pump, as you can see, pushes liquid into the engine, here, into the block. This liquid circulates throughout the engine wall. It has some chambers. It circulates inside the engine wall, taking away that temperature back into the pump, push it to the radiator. These pipes, you can see we have this pipe, and I'm very sure we have another pipe coming from the radiator to the engine. Perfect. This one. So liquid comes from the engine, very, very hot. It is pushed by the pump into the radiator. Radiator attracts a lot of wind when you're riding. So the liquid inside the radiator is cooled by the wind. And if the wind is not enough, we have the fan. We have fans here. Here's a fan, and the other side we have a small fan. They cool the liquid here. The liquid is recirculated back into the engine wall. It takes away the temperatures from the engine, comes back to the radiator. It is cooled. It is recirculated when it is colder into the engine, and the process continues, maintaining some optimum working temperature in this engine. If this one fails to work at some point, this engine is as good as dead. Okay? If this one doesn't work properly, this one is gonna die. Because engines generate temperature above 100 degrees centigrade, they need some way of cooling. And because this one doesn't have the fins, it is not cooled by air properly. The thickness of this material is so huge for air to cool enough. This one has a very, very slim engine. As you can see, the thickness of these fins, it tells you even the interior of the engine still slim. So air is going to push through these fins. Those people who know physics understand surface area. Surface area. There is a lot of surface in which the engine gets into contact with the high-speed wind, making the engine lose heat through wind. And that's why we have these fins to trap air, make the airflow as slim as possible so that it can get into those tiny holes and take away all the excess temperature. This engine is not very powerful, meaning it doesn't also generate a lot of heat. It doesn't generate a lot of heat. The little heat that it generates has enough mechanism to get lost through the air. So it is very difficult for this engine to overheat unless you keep it idling for a whole day without any air flowing, without any wind. That's the only way you can overheat this engine. Or you run it without oil. As long as it has oil in it, it is going to be good. Because oil circulates through the engine, making sure temperatures at this point are the same temperatures at this point. The whole engine has the same temperatures through the oil circulation, which is circulated by some pump, oil pump that is somewhere down here inside the engine. So because this engine doesn't generate a lot of heat, it doesn't require sophisticated cooling mechanism. You only get this kind of an engine on the small cc motorcycles. Small cc motorcycles. In the old days of 1990s, we usually had very big engines that were purely air-cooled, like the Yamaha FJ 900, the one that is used by the traffic police officers. You find that it's a 900cc inline 4 engine, but it is air-cooled. They had a very special material that they were using to construct the engine, a material which could lose heat easily. Even when the person is riding slowly, you can still lose a lot of heat easily. But these days, the cast material that is making the engines is not the same as the cast that was used in those days, meaning this one can retain a lot of heat and damage the engine. That is why we need these fins, and only on the small cc motorcycles. As the motorcycles upgrade in power, we get now the oil cooled. Remember, this one doesn't have any liquid external that cools this engine. That other one has the coolant. It also has the oil in it, but it doesn't have an oil cooler. That one doesn't have an oil cooler. It only has a coolant radiator. A radiator that has a different liquid. This only runs on engine oil, nothing else. This one runs on engine oil, but it has an external gadget that cools the oil. So what happens here is hot oil from the engine. Remember in the Taro that has a liquid radiator, here we had the pipes for the coolant. These ones are supposed to be the pipes for the coolant. And they are huge pipes. You can tell they're huge pipes. Let me show you that you can remember. I'm talking about these pipes. You see? They are huge. They are rubber pipes. These are rubber pipes and they are huge. They carry coolant. These ones are metallic pipes. Metallic pipes. And they are slim. Can you see? Small pipes. What these pipes do is, one of them is taking hot oil from the engine all the way up to this gadget. And then this gadget is going to trap wind as you ride. So the little oil that comes here through these pipes is going to be cooled by wind below the temperatures that are in the engine, and then recirculated back to the engine, which is now a cooler oil. Cold oil with low temperatures because of wind, will be recirculated back through these pipes, back into the engine. Okay, this is where the oil filter is. And the oil pump is somewhere around here. So, it is going to push hot oil out of the engine into the oil cooler, which is trapping wind, which is being cooled by wind. And the moment the oil circulates through this, can you see these lines? Can you see the lines inside? You can see the lines? These are small pipes. You see those metallic things? They are small pipes that run through small cavities where oil runs in very, very minimal amount so that it can cool faster. And then it is recirculated back to the engine with very low temperatures mixed with the hot oil that is already here to reduce the oil temperatures inside the engine. You're putting 1.3 liters of oil here. This guy can only take like 100 milliliters of oil. But that 100 ml of oil is going to help the 1.2 that is left in the engine to maintain some good temperature. This engine is also cooling through the air-cooled mechanism. You see it has the fins. It is also cooling with the air-cooled mechanism, but not so effective. Not so effective. Meaning, if we reduce the operations of this guy, this engine is going to still cool by air, but it is going to suffer. When you ride slowly, this engine is going to overheat because the air cooling system is not as effective as in the other guy. The engine wall is thicker than the other guy, meaning it is going to maintain higher temperature than the other one. That is why we require this. So, you find that the oil that comes from the engine is so hot, around 100 degrees. Within a few seconds, it is heat down to almost 15 degrees and then recirculated back to the engine. It is going to change the temperature that was here to below 100, maybe to 88, 89, 90. By the time the temperature rises again to around 100, some other oil has already been pushed by the pump to this guy and it is on the way back. So the cycle continues of temperatures around 88 to 95. 88 to 95, you don't go above that point. As long as you are riding, there is wind, you never go about that temperature. So you don't have chances of this engine overheating and blowing up the gasket and the valves. This engine is very safe. Mostly what you find is off-road motorcycles have this. A lot of off-road bikes have this. From Suzuki to Yamaha, you find a lot of off-road bikes, you'll find them with this. They are just trying to make the bike less complicated by having this. Because there is a lot of technology required for this guy to run. Because as you can see, we have fans that has to come off at some temperature. We have this guy. This is the guy that maintains the temperature. As you can see, we have a sensor. This is a sensor. This is a sensor. Another sensor. These are pipes. So there is a lot of stuff involved in the liquid-cooled engines. To make a motorcycle less complicated, especially if it is not a high-powered motorcycle, we just have this. Very simple science. Push the oil up, recirculate it back when it is colder. Push the oil up, recirculate it when it is colder. As good as that. This one comes with the raw capacity motorcycles. This is a 200cc single cylinder, so it doesn't generate a lot of power. Okay, it doesn't generate a lot of power, so it doesn't generate a lot of heat. Because power comes with heat. The more powerful the bike, the more hotter the engine is. So, this one is less powerful, less temperature. A little bit more powerful, a little bit more temperature. That's why we need this guy. More powerful, more pistons. This is one piston, second piston. This is single, that is single. This is twin. So you find that the more the pistons, the more the temperature. The more the power, the more the temperature. That is why we need this guy. Okay? So I need this guy. This one is the more expensive in terms of maintenance, repairs, and even the purchase price for the motorcycle. This is more expensive. When you find a motorcycle with a radiator, definitely it is more expensive than the other guys. There is another category of motorcycles that has both this one and this one. You find them combined. You find a motorcycle with a radiator at this point, and this oil cooler, this one, positioned somewhere down here. This is the oil filter. Some bikes like the Suzuki V-Strom 650, you find them with an oil cooler somewhere here. So this motorcycle is cooling both by the coolant and also the oil is being recirculated. That is a motorcycle you cannot mess up. It is very difficult for that motorcycle to develop heating issues. Also the BMW GS 1200, 1200 RT, the police escort versions, you find them with an oil cooler, this guy, hidden somewhere here. If you look at the BMW motorcycles, the GS 1200, GS 1150, GS 1250, the RT, you find they have this at this point. This guy, same size, hidden somewhere here. And there is a vent where when someone is riding, air is coming through these vents and hitting this guy, hidden somewhere here. You find them hidden under the headlights. But the same motorcycle has the current radiator now hidden here. You find sometimes they have two. You might find it has a smaller one on this side, smaller one on the other side. They have two pieces of radiator working the same way. So it has this and it has the oil cooler. Now that is the more expensive in terms of maintenance and stuff like that. They're going to be higher in cost. Okay? So here we have air cooled that doesn't have anything else. No oil recirculation, no liquid, no coolant, no water, nothing. This one doesn't have the radiator for coolant or putting water. It has oil cooler that recirculates colder oil. This one has the coolant radiator. And this one you can open, you can see it has the coolant. This is green in color. This is green liquid. Now, some people opt to use water. As we close this discussion, some people opt to use water here. Water is going to work fine, but it is going to generate another problem of rust. You find that this radiator is going to rust from inside, and at some point, it will start getting leakages because rust is going to corrode the metal, and at some point, you will have leakages. Also, the engine tends to get damaged by water, which is, if you put tap water, definitely when it is boiled for 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 kilometers, water is going to turn to something different because water also has chemicals. You find fluorine, you find chlorine in water, you find a lot of chemicals. Especially if you get water from a dam, water from a swamp, you get that it has a lot of chemicals. Those chemicals are deposited inside the engine. So they are going to clog that, to clog these small pipes. Sometimes it is going to generate problems. Sometimes you can be lucky and run forever without problems, but it is not going to be effective in cooling as this liquid, because this liquid doesn't easily evaporate, doesn't easily boil. But when water hits 100 degrees, definitely it is going to boil. So you realize you'll be adding water all the time, adding water, because water is evaporating after being boiled for a lot of mileage. But this one is better. The cooling system is better. For long distance, through traffic, this one is better. This one is better for small bikes. You don't need anything complicated here. This engine will not overheat. It's not a high-powered engine. Not the temperature levels are lower. You will not have issues with, as long as you have enough oil. This one is going to be good overall, especially when you go off-road. Even if you drop the bike, you don't have chances of this thing getting hit. If you hit this one and then you get a leakage, you should never try to ride that bike because it is going to blow up the engine because of overheating. So this one is more complicated. As you can see, this one even has a metal guard, which is not enough. You need something different to guard this. In case this bike drops, you need to guard this, because if this one gets hit and you get a leakage, a small leakage here, this engine is as good as dead if you do not realize early enough. This one has nothing. This one is as good as the protection you see here. No complications. So, the more power a bike generates, the more temperature it is going to generate. This is like 25 horsepower. 25 horsepower is not a lot of power. It is just enough for commuting and going off-road here and there. That one is not a lot of power. That is why we do not generate a lot of heat here. This guy is going to be enough. It's going to be enough. This is like 18 horsepower. 18 horsepower is some low levels of power for beginners. The temperatures are going to be very low. Very, very low. But here, when you go above 40 horsepower, now you need something better to cool that engine. Something better to cool that engine. So, the more the power, the more the temperature. Okay? And as you can see here, this bike doesn't require these fins. This one doesn't require them because it has a very good cooling system here. Very good. But this one requires them. If you put this kind of an engine as air-cooled, definitely it is going to misbehave because the surface area in which wind gets into contact with the engine is low. Look at this. Even at the base of it, we have these fins. These fins are supposed to help you lose the excess temperature by increasing the surface area in which wind gets into contact with your bike. So if someone tells you it is liquid cooled, make sure you can see this. If this is not there, they are lying to you. If someone tells you it is air cooled, but you can see this guy, tell them they are lying. It is oil cooled. If someone tells you this bike is oil cooled and you cannot see something like this, they are lying to you. Have you understood the difference? Have you understood the difference? This is a class that you're not even paying school fees. Mechanical class that you're not paying school fees. All what you are required to do is to hit the subscribe button, subscribe to the channel, and also give a thumbs up for the video. Hit like button here. It is going to help me get more views. It's going to help YouTube recirculate this video, recommend it to more people. Let more people learn from us. My name is Meshach Samson Maina. Two Wheels Paradise. That was our class. Liquid cooled, oil cooled, air cooled. Don't get duped. Hit the subscribe button. I'm out of it.